America, wake up. The Holocaust. We're talking about the American people, the Chinese people, economic collapse, human rights, genocide, and slavery. Prison camps for Republicans, Democrats, liberals, Americans, Chinese people, blacks, Hispanics, LBGT, atheists, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and whites. Note, this does not apply to politicians, Hollywood, the media, and all that endorse the Chinese Communist Party, aka CC prison camp operators, Democratic politicians, and a few bad Republicans, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bidens, Schiff, Pelosi, and Schumer. Why? For greed and political favor.
It's going to be a Holocaust for the young kids. All right, the elderly, the rich can leave. They have passport, foreign passports, but the kids are going to really suffer.
Democratic communist politicians. Joe Biden calls Trump supporters chump. Hillary Clinton calls Trump supporters basket of deplorables. Nancy Pelosi says Trump and his supporters are enemies of the state. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, calls Trump supporters sycophants.
Archiving these Trump, she says, is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future?
Holocaust, prison camps, operated by elected government officials.
Right here. This is exactly what happened in my country, Venezuela. They make a list of 3 million people. Everyone was banned for any state benefit or any job. Thousands were fired after that list, me included. People who have lists of those who thought differently from them. They were arrested, put into camps, tortured, and murdered. So KGB, Soviets, Stasi, Chavez gave a name to people on his list. Nazi Party, CCP lists of Uyghurs, currently over 1 million in re-education camps, and AOC. They already have a list. This is not some new thing. Oh, let's just make a list. They already have a list.
Do not be fooled by politicians and the media. Communist countries hate and want to destroy America and Israel.
China is going to be a much more powerful country than Russia.
There's communist China. It wants to control the entire world, including Americans.
That the Biden family has a largely hidden story of the secret financial relationship between the Biden family and the Chinese government. It's a relationship that grew while Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States. It's the story of the second most powerful man in the world at the time, and how his family was striking deals with America's chief rival on the global stage, the People's Republic of China.
A rising China is a positive development, not only for the people of China, but for the United States and the world as a whole.
Joe Biden and the media want the American people to believe that Russia, with 150 million people, are more powerful than China, who has 1.5 billion people? I do not buy that.
His partners had useful connections. One was Christopher Hines, the stepson of Senator John Kerry, a powerful U.S. senator who would later become Secretary of State. The Obama administration did indeed approve it. How much money did the Biden family make from these deals? How deep do their ties to the Chinese government run? We can't know for sure. So what do we know? We know that the Biden family has a series of lucrative deals with the Chinese government. We know that these deals came despite a lack of experience by the Bidens in the areas they covered. We know that they happened while Joe Biden was steering U.S. foreign policy towards China. We also know that these deals didn't just make the Bidens money, they had potentially dangerous consequences for our national security. We know that Hunter Biden's firm, backed by the Chinese government, invested in a company that was actively stealing nuclear secrets from the United States. So why does this matter? Because we need to know who our leaders are doing business with.
Chinese officials are influencing U.S. politicians through their family members. Dianne Feinstein is a California senator. She was one of the loudest voices pushing for free trade with China in the 1990s. At the same time, her husband was investing millions of dollars there. When George W. Bush was president, his brother Neil got a $400,000 a year contract with a Chinese firm. Why corruption threatens global security.
Almost any senior name that I start researching, I run into practices like this. It is extraordinarily widespread, and that's my question. How did we all convince ourselves that this isn't corrupt?
And speaking of widespread but technically not corrupt practices, Democratic presidential candidate and former VP Joe Biden. As vice president, Biden dealt with China on more than one occasion, like when he convinced Chinese leader Xi Jinping to let more Hollywood movies into the country. And as Biden told Hollywood executives, that helped double their box office shares.
So this land, all right, we call China, is run by this CCP, a huge, the biggest gangster group in the world. And below them, they have 90 million members. And below the members are the 1.4 billion people. Who are they? Slaves. That's all they are. Slaves. They have no freedom. And you think they have money?
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not a competition for us.
On the surface, that's a really puzzling thing to say. Joe Biden's saying China is not really a threat. China is America's chief rival on the global stage. China has said openly that they want to supplant us as the world's superpower.
And I believe then what I believe now, that a rising China is a positive development.
He welcomes their rise as a global power. Why exactly? Perhaps it's personal. Perhaps it's about his family. Perhaps it's about money.
Joe Biden and the media want the American people to believe that Russia, with 150 million people, are more powerful than China, who has 1.5 billion people? I do not buy that.
Many see the slogan Black Lives Matter, or BLM, as a noble plea for equal treatment under the law. It's a cry to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. But what does the Black Lives Matter organization actually stand for? To find out, look no further than their leaders, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. Here's Cullors in a revealing 2015 interview.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
But it's hard to believe this radical agenda is what most signed up for when they made that hashtag Black Lives Matter social media post, or that every employee, customer, or shareholder at Nike endorses a disruption of the family. Garza first coined the phrase in 2013, the day George Zimmerman was acquitted of murdering Trayvon Martin. This evolution has helped embolden an agenda vastly more ambitious than a national defunding of police. The goals of the Black Lives Matter organization go far beyond what most people think. They're hiding in plain sight, there for the world to see. If only we read beyond the slogans and the summaries of the movement they helped to create. It's a distinction with a profound difference. Their radical Marxist agenda is bent on supplanting the basic building blocks of society, the family, replacing it with the state, and destroying the economic system that has lifted more people from poverty than any other. Theirs is a blueprint for misery, not justice. It must be rejected.
In a lengthy and heated exchange with a defense attorney, George Zimmerman called the Black Lives Movement, quote, a group of terrorists. For Sentinel News Now, I'm Kayla O'Brien.
You associated Mr. Apperson with the Black Lives Matter movement. Is that correct?
First of all, they're terrorists. It's not a movement, as you have said now. That I see them as terrorists, if you'd like to address them correctly.
I'm just asking, here's a question mark.
I don't believe Black Lives Matter is a movement, sir. They're terrorist cowards.
On the link between the Chinese government and the Black Lives Matter movement. So BLM obviously has become this cause celeb, or at least it was a cause celeb until people started randomly burning down cities and such. So what are the links between Chinese funding and BLM? Because it's easy to see this sort of thing as a conspiracy theory. So what's the actual evidence as far as foreign funding for movements like Black Lives Matter?
So there's a pro-China group. I think the link is more ideological. There's a pro-China group that has been pro-China from the beginning, and that is the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco, who is the fiscal sponsor of one of Alicia Garza's many ventures. Alicia Garza is the founder of Black Lives Matter. One best thing to her is sitting atop a worldwide global revolutionary network. It says that the Black Futures Network is a fiscally sponsored project of the CPA San Francisco. The CPA San Francisco was started in the midst of the Cultural Revolution by Ivor Quinn.
And his call was to stop the Mosley March. It's as simple as that.
Some 20,000 anti-fascist protesters turned out to disrupt the march. The day resulted in violent clashes between the police, the fascists, and the anti-fascist protesters. Clashes such as these contributed to the decline in popularity of the British Union of Fascists. In 1940, the party was banned outright by the government. On the 31st of May 2020, President Donald Trump tweeted that he planned to formally designate Antifa as a terrorist group. Antifa is short for anti-fascist. It's a leaderless, decentralized movement comprised of myriad groups whose roots lie in leftist ideologies such as communism, anarchism, and socialism, as well as anti-racism. But where do Antifa come from? And what link do they have with the anti-fascist protests of the past? Fascism is a political ideology that originated under Mussolini in Italy and swept through Europe between 1919 and 1945 and beyond. The broad characteristics of fascism include dictatorial rule, nationalism, elitism, racism, and repression of opposition. In fascist Italy, any perceived threat to national unity was violently suppressed. Meanwhile, in Germany, groups to oppose fascist ideology were also growing. In 1932, Antifaschistische Action was formed by the Communist Party of Germany. It's from this group that modern-day Antifa adopted their name and logo. Spanish Civil War is sometimes seen as lying at the heart of the anti-fascist movement. Groups across Spain with diverse interests opposed to Franco's fascism. They were also joined by the International Brigades and other overseas volunteer groups. While the exact numbers are unknown, an estimated 40,000 foreign volunteers from 55 countries are thought to have fought in Spain. The response from international volunteers was huge. Many felt that preventing a fascist dictatorship in Spain would bring about the collapse of fascism in Italy and Germany and prevent its spread across the world.
U.S. elected government officials are responsible for the Holocaust on economic collapse, the Holocaust on school education, the Holocaust on closing businesses, the genocide on human rights, government shutdown, prosecution mandates, and slavery enforcement or jail time. We voted for a great man that truly does love the United States of America.